Passionate about, and chances are their answer will include football or racing. One man has excelled in both. On January 13th, 1981, a relative unknown named Joe Gibbs became the 17th head coach of the Washington Redskins. With a passion for winning and an eye for talent, Gibbs wasted no time in turning the mediocre Redskins into a dominant force in the National Football League. During his first 12 years as the head coach of the Redskins, he built a dynasty, leading the Burgundy and Gold to 4 Super Bowls and 3 World Championships. In his second stint with the Redskins from 2004 to 2008, Coach Gibbs led the team to the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 seasons. Elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Gibbs may be remembered most not for winning percentages, but for guiding the Redskins through the toughest circumstances the team ever faced, the shocking death of star defensive back Sean Taylor in November of 2007. One-time Redskins general manager Bobby Beathard said of the coach, he could go into any area and have the same results. And so, in 1991, Coach Gibbs decided to pursue his childhood dream. Coach Gibbs took his relentless work ethic and motivational skills and put them to the test in a new venue, the asphalt ovals of NASCAR racing. And the results quickly paralleled those he left on the football field. In only their second season, Gibbs and crew won the Super Bowl of stock car racing, the Daytona 500. From there, the team quickly rose to the upper echelons of NASCAR. In 1999, driver Tony Stewart won NASCAR Rookie of the Year honors. Bobby Labonte took home the team's first NASCAR championship for sponsor Interstate Batteries in 2000. 2 years after winning the biggest prize in motorsports, Tony Stewart brought the orange and white Home Depot bunch a second NASCAR Cup championship in 3 years for Joe Gibbs Racing. In 2005, Stewart would win again, gaining the 3rd overall championship for JGR. Also that year, the corporate colors of FedEx and the number 11 car were added to the team. And FedEx driver Denny Hamlin won Rookie of the Year. 2008 saw the addition of Kyle Busch and M&M's as partners on the number 18 car, as well as a manufacturer switch to Toyota. This combination made an instant impact with a team record of 10 wins in the Sprint Cup Series. The 2013 season brought Matt Kenseth to Joe Gibbs Racing. Kenseth brought an impressive resume to the team as the 2003 Cup Series champion and a 2-time Daytona 500 winner. Kenseth has built upon that resume, finding it hard to keep the number 20 Toyota out of victory lane. The 2015 season brings Carl Edwards to the Gibbs stable of drivers as Joe Gibbs Racing adds a 4th car to the mix. Edwards brings his own legacy of winning to the team and rounds out one of the most impressive lineups of drivers in all of NASCAR. Across the board, the Gibbs team continues to find success, consistently winning at each level of the sport. The NASCAR Sprint Cup teams make their home at Joe Gibbs Racing's corporate headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina. JGR now houses over 450 employees at its 250,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility. Joe Gibbs is famous for saying, you win with one thing, people. Not only are the employees at Joe Gibbs Racing working together, but they're also growing together. Physically, through daily workout programs in the team's NFL-style weight room, and spiritually, through weekly Bible studies and small groups held on the premises. Away from his business interests, Joe Gibbs founded Youth for Tomorrow, a home for troubled teens aged 14 to 18. Over the years, Joe's time and commitment has helped turn many kids away from drugs, alcohol, and crime, instilling in them Christian principles to get them started back on the right track. In 2009, Joe Gibbs launched the Game Plan for Life project, starting with a book and the website GamePlanForLife.com. Tackling 11 topics critical to men and women, Coach Gibbs lined up 11 experts to explain how the Bible provides the best game plan for success in each area. As Joe explains it, God is the head coach, we are the players, and He's given us the game plan for life in His Word, the Bible. Joe and his wife Pat make their home on Lake Norman, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Gibbs spends most of his free time with his 7 grandsons and 1 granddaughter. Taylor Gibbs, the son of Joe's oldest, is currently winning his battle with leukemia, which has given Coach Gibbs a new perspective on life and toughness. Together, the Gibbs family has triumphed and gone from upstart to champion twice. Whether on the field or on the track, Coach Gibbs has always been about winning and will continue to strive for his quest to win the biggest game of all, the game of life.
Well, thank you there. Hey, I appreciate that. Being a football coach, throw a few boos in there and I'll feel right at home. We had raised the hands on a few NASCAR people, and we definitely had some NFL people here. I saw the hands fans, and I got to tell you, you NFL guys, I got a bone to pick with you. All those times that I took those Redskins across the country, and I come in those stadiums to play your local favorite, some of those names you call me, I don't even know what those things are. I see a few of the red faces out there, but in any case, I think the real reason that Mark and the guys brought me in here, I just want to tell you, being the coach, okay, the word was that some of you guys were running the streets at night. Tonight, I have bed check. You're going to be in bed at 11 o'clock, okay? I'll be checking the beds. But I think it's only fair, too, to say to you, who do you have up here speaking to you guys? I mean, Mark's up here, the technical person, and now you follow that with a football coach? Are you kidding me? Well, when I went to college, I thought the only reason to be there was to stay eligible for football, okay? And then somewhere in there, they told me when I got to be a junior, they said, hey, you got to pick a major. And so I took out the list of majors. I started going down the list. I skipped over neurosurgeon, physicist. I kept going, and I went, oh, my gosh, what can I do? And all of a sudden, I went, physical education. I can do this. Ballroom dancing and handball. This is perfect. And so I think it's only fair to say to you, that's the guy you got up here in front of you. They actually paid me money, okay? They paid me money in the NFL to stand on those sidelines and go, hit him, kill him, okay? And now I'm watching cars go around in circles. So I got to tell you, I'm being honest with you now. I'm telling you who you have up here, telling you some personal stuff. I'm sure I can trust you guys. It won't go outside this room. I've already shared with you how smart I am. And the other thing about my life, I got to tell you, and being honest with you, I always get in the wrong end of everything. Any of you guys that way? The whole time I'm coaching football in the NFL, I'm saying to myself, I'm killing myself. Okay, I'm sleeping at the office 3 nights a week. Okay, I'm doing all the work. The most I could win in a bonus was if we won the Super Bowl was $75,000. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money. But I'm saying to myself with my PE brain, I'm doing all the work and the owner is getting rich. And so I said, if I get in something else, I'm going to become the owner. I'll show them. That's how smart I am. So I move over to NASCAR, motorsports, and I became the owner. Showed them. Now, to tell you how smart that is, about 3 years into racing, we'd won a big race at Atlanta Motor Speedway with Bobby Labonte. And so, man, I got up the next morning, I got the paper out, the sports page, Pat's cooking breakfast, and so I started going down that list, and I wanted to see how much money we won. So I go down, I find NASCAR, and it went Bobby Labonte. It was $120,000. And so I said, Mom, we won $120,000. My wife, Pat, she likes the buck. She thought that was great. And then I sat there for about 5 minutes, and I thought, and I said, now, wait a second. We took 3 cars down there. We wrecked 2 of them. I just lost $50,000. And now I'm looking down the sports page that day, and I'm looking, the golfer that day, the golfer won $600,000. And I said to myself, no, wait a second. They give him the golf clubs. They give him the balls. He pays one guy, the caddy. It took me 70 years, but I finally figured it out. Me and my grandbabies, we're all playing golf, man. So that's the person that you got up here speaking this morning. And so I felt like the first thing I'd do is start off by being honest. But I do want to think about something for a minute. Football coach, okay? What's the football coach got in common with people like yourselves that are in business? You guys are all on teams. I'm on the Spirian team. And you guys all, I know, have read a little bit up on your bios. You guys have what? You have your own teams. So what does the football coach and the business person have in common? Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. Well, immediately, if you compare the business world with the football world, okay, what do I have in common with you? Well, here's what I've learned in 30 years of coaching football. Almost everybody thinks they know a lot about football. Did you know that? So I know I have an immediate connection with most of you guys. Now, having said that, I illustrate that with a little story. Okay, I flew into downtown D.C. my first go-around in coaching, and I came outside the airport there, and I wanted to go to the football stadium. So I hailed a cab. I got in a cab. Now, if you get in a cab in downtown D.C., odds are that person driving the cab will have not been in this country more than 2 weeks. That was the case with me, and so I told the cabbie I want to go to the football stadium. Now, you would think a cabbie in downtown D.C. would know how to get to two things, the White House and the football stadium. This guy didn't have a clue. So here I am, the football coach, in the back seat, giving instructions to the cabbie on how to get to the football stadium. Down here, take a right on 7th Street. And so we're about 5 minutes into that ride, and this cabbie turns around in broken English, and he says to me, You coached the Washington Redskins. And I went, yes. I was feeling pretty good about myself. He recognizes the old coach. And he goes about another 2 minutes, and he turns around and he goes, You need to throw deep more. So I know I have an immediate connection with almost all you guys. You think you know a lot about football. So let's start out with that premise, okay? And I want to spend a minute or two here with you this morning. Then I want to share a few of the things that I've kind of learned on team building over 35 years. None of this came from a Harvard study. It's just, hey, what I've learned in trying to put teams together. So I thought we'd start off, though, by comparing the football world with your world, the business world. So the first thing I would say with you is what? We both share one thing in common. We're both involved in intense competition. Think about your world. All the people that you're competing against. Why are you here? You're getting all the updates, okay? And we can definitely say in the technology world, you guys are in intense competition. Think about me in the NFL. I had a little owner, my first go-around in football. It was Jack Kent Cook, a self-made billionaire. I didn't say M, I said B, billionaire. And we used to go out to Mr. Cook, this 80-year-old little guy, and he'd be sitting there with and to me and the coaching staff, his favorite saying was this, Joe, you know what I love about the NFL? And I say, no, Mr. Cook, what is it? And he goes, we know who the enemy is. See, there were 28 people trying to get one of these things. And he liked that. His other businesses, LA Daily News, intense competition in LA. He owned the Chrysler Building in New York, real estate. Elmendorf Racing Farms. Okay, and so he was saying in the NFL, at least we know who the enemy is. So I think we can say what? We can start off by saying we're both involved in intense competition. Okay, the second thing I think that we can definitely share in common here, we're both involved in sales. Sales of some kind. You're selling a service, okay? Lots of times you're selling yourself or a product. Think about my life in the NFL. What was the most important job for me to do? I came in on Mondays and Tuesdays. We crafted a game plan, me and the assistant coaches. And on Wednesday, we start putting the game plan in. First and second down, third down, 2 to 6, plus 20-yard line. We put the game plan in segments, okay? I had to sell that game plan. You have to sell your business plans. Okay? I had to sell football players to come to the Washington Redskins in free agency. You have to recruit people for your teams. I would say this. We both share that in common, don't we? We're involved in some kind of sales. The third thing I would say that we both share in common, you guys have to please the customer. In the end, you got to please the customer. Think about me. Who did I have to please? Man, I remember about the third game that I had to coach against the Kansas City Chiefs at RFK. I'm a young coach. I go out in front of those 70,000 people at RFK. Man, it's hot. It's tied up 14-14 in the first half. I'm sweating like mad. And all of a sudden, it came down to the very first time for me being a head coach, and it was 4th and 1. And I heard everybody in the stands go for it, go for it. I was a young coach, and I went, they want to go for it. And so I went for it. And we didn't get it, and they all went, boo! So I think we can say what? We both are trying to please the customer, and it ain't easy, okay? All right, the fourth thing I love about what we do and what you're doing. I got a little friend in California. He's got a small business, and I think he's got the greatest little logo. That logo is a dinosaur. He's got it on matchbook covers, napkins, and right underneath the dinosaur it says this, adapt or die. What's he saying? Hey, in the business world, your world, it's fast-paced, huh? Think about that. Think about me with the race team. 10 years ago, we had 5 engineers. Okay, 10 years later, today, we have 55 engineers working on technology. My job is what? Man, all that technology goes into those cars. Okay, but then we have to come out there and transfer that to racing on the racetrack. It's a technology world that you and I live in. I said this, when I coached in the NFL, I said the NFL changed at roughly 30% a year. What's that mean? It means this, if you're standing still, we're falling behind, right? So I'd say those 4 things we share in common. Hey, we've got to do what? We're involved in intense competition, selling ourselves, pleasing the fans, and definitely you and I, we're involved in fast-paced technology. Okay, Spirion does that. We need to know where all of our haulers are, all of them crisscrossing the country. They let us know that. It's all what? We're all hooked together. It takes a platform to do that. Spirion's our partner, and they're a big part of our technology at Joe Gibbs Racing. Okay, we said that. I kind of set the base here, okay? So you kind of know where I come from. You kind of know who you got up here speaking this morning. And so here's what I want to do. I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about what I've spent my entire life doing. That's trying to build a team. Okay? So if we think about that for a minute, okay, I would say that I share that with you guys. And when you think about it, what are we doing? We're trying to pick people, put them on a team, asking them to sacrifice their individual goals for the goals of the team. Why is that hard? Why is that hard? You and I are dealing with human nature. Why is that hard? Well, for one reason, I can tell you this, I learned something with my grandkids. Okay? My first grandkid that we had was Joe Jackson, named after me. He gets anything he wants. Okay? I know a lot of you are probably in the same boat. Hey, Joe Jackson comes on the scene, and to be quite truthful, here's what I witnessed in his life. First couple of years, man, everything was great for Joe Jackson. Every toy was his, all the attention was his. But then, 2 years later, his brother shows up, Miller. Now Jackson's got to share things. And every time Miller, I witnessed, touched one of Jackson's toys, it was what? Jackson, because what? We're self-centered. We come into the world and we have to do what? Okay? If we're going to be good team members, we have to set our individual goals off to one side, okay, and be willing to be what? Good team members. And that's hard. So you and I, we're doing the same thing. We're building teams. And so I thought I'd share a couple of things with you this morning. Like I said, this is something that just, over the years, I've been convinced that these are some of the most critical things you can do in team building. Okay, so we're going to kick it off here. Number one, I always tell people anytime you're talking about team building, I say this to them. Make sure you define your goals for the team in the shortest time span possible. And then Make sure that you let your team know that and that they're going to be measured on their accomplishments. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean this. In football, it's easy. Man, we got 6 days to get ready. Man, we work our guts out. We go out on that field on Sundays. We play that game. And in 60 minutes it's over with, we look up at that clock and we've either won or lost. Listen, you put people in that environment, they'll compete. We come into this world competitive. You know who some of the most competitive people in the world are? The ladies. How do I know that? When I coached the Washington Redskins and we lost games, guess who wrote me most of the nasty notes? The ladies. They're competitive in sports, business, with their kids. We come into the world what? We're competitive. And so you and I, we have to know that what? We're dealing with human nature, and we're competitive. So here's the deal. In football, in racing, it's easy. 6 days to get ready, play the game, race the race, okay, and we know if we've won or lost. What's the problem then in business? Here's what I found in business by having a small business myself, okay? The problem is sometimes in business, we can have people going to work for 1, 2, 3 months. They're not being measured. And if you put people in that environment, they'll do what? They'll drift. It's much harder in the business world to define those goals. So here's what I say. Do everything you can to say to your team, hey, in 2 weeks, we're going to measure every sales contact we've made. Okay, you're all going to be graded on that. And then, okay, make sure that they're recognized, and we're going to make that announcement to the team. Okay, so number 1, define your goals in the shortest time span as possible. All right, number 2, I made a big discovery in 1982. The coaching staff said, Joe, why don't you try and motivate the defensive line for the Washington Redskins? Okay, now think about this group. Okay, how do you motivate this group? They ranged in height between 6'1" and 6'3", in weight somewhere between 240 pounds and 310 pounds, and in salary somewhere between $300,000 and $1.5 million. How do you motivate that group? Okay, they have everything. I made a decision to go in and talk to those guys, okay, the night before a game. I'd gone out the day before, and I made up my mind I was going to buy some of those little Sony recorders. You guys have all seen those. You put them on your belt, put the headphones on. Those young guys love that stuff, and they blow their brains out with the music, okay? And so I walked in front of that group, and here's my group now, 8 guys. You got Dexter Manley, Charles Mann, Daryl Grant. You guys don't know those guys. Those are tough dudes, okay? So I walk in there, and here's what I did. I held up one of those little Sony recorders, and I said, hey, every one of you guys that gets a sack in this game tomorrow, I'm going to give you one of these Sony recorders. And I made a discovery that night. That Dexter Manley, he looked at me, and he goes, I want that recorder. See, that was not in his $600,000 salary. And here's what happened on Monday. After that game, I called up Dexter in front of his teammates. He came strutting up there, and I handed him 3 of those Sony recorders. And I made a discovery that day. That man would kill for $150. Okay, I decided to expand on that. I went out and bought 3 Lazy Boy recliners. You could check. They're still at Redskin Park. Okay, I put defense on one, offense on one, special teams on one. And here's what I said to the team. I said, hey, this week, the offensive player of the week, the defensive player of the week, and the special teams player of the week, they're going to get to sit in these Lazy Boys in all the meetings. And the rest of us are sitting in those hardback chairs. I found out those suckers, they would kill for that Lazy Boy. I expanded on that. Now, what I'm saying to you, it doesn't have to be big things. I gave the player of the week their own parking space. Brass nameplate, his number painted in that circle right next to the building. You better not park in that man's parking space. Okay? What am I saying here? Hey, we're dealing with competitive nature. Okay? And if you reward those people on your team, in front of their peer group, what you're going to find is what? They'll compete. Let me go even farther than that. We're at practice one day. Okay, it's hotter than I'll get out. We're practicing out there on the field, and this practice it's awful. It stinks. Okay? Now, all football players like to play games. None of them like to practice. Okay? So I decided I'd call the team up. I called them all up, and here's what I said. I got to try and find a way to motivate these guys. I said, here's the deal. I said, at the end of this week, the coaching staff is going to vote on the practice player of the week. Okay? Now, I had a big black stiletto truck that the race team gave me. It had the chrome wheels and everything, cell phone, the whole deal. Every morning when I pulled in, all the players would go, hey, coach, cool truck. Man, they loved that truck. And I said, here's the deal. The practice player of the week this week is going to get to take my truck, and he can drive it for a week. I'm going to pay for the gas. I'm going to pay for everything, okay? I'm going to pay for cell phone, whatever you want to do with it. Okay, now here's what I witnessed that afternoon in that practice. We had Eddie Simmons playing right tackle for us. Eddie was 6'3", 350 pounds. I'm not so sure Eddie had ever run more than 3 yards in his entire life, okay? But he was the perfect right tackle. If you put somebody 2 yards from him and told him to kill him, he was the right offensive tackle. Here's what I witnessed that afternoon. Eddie Simmons chasing a defensive back 40 yards down the field in practice. And the next week, Eddie Simmons is driving my stiletto truck, okay? All right, now what's the point on that? I'm just trying to make a point to you. If you define those goals in the shortest time span possible, make sure your teams knows that we're going to evaluate everybody in here based on that, and then you hand out those rewards in front of their peer group, and you have those little rewards for them, here's what you're going to find. People will compete. They'll go after it. And so I just share that as the first two things with you this morning that I think is extremely important. Okay, third thing. If you forget everything else I said, just remember this morning. What's the most important asset you and I have? What's the most important asset that Spirion has? Okay? Is it the product? Is it the service? Is it the platform? No. What is it? Our people. Our people are our most important asset. Okay? So we need to remember that, you and I. You're coaches of your team. I'm coaches of my team. We need to remember that. And I illustrate that with this little story. When I got the job with the Washington Redskins, 1981, everybody said to me, they came to me and said, Joe, you got to get John Riggins back here. Big fullback. Okay, he had set out in a contract dispute the year before and got everybody fired. I said, oh my gosh. So I said, I didn't want to get fired. So the second week after I got the job with the Redskins, I got on a plane, flew to Lawrence, Kansas. Okay, I got off that plane, got me a rental car. I go down to the first gas station. I pull in there. I said, hey, can you tell me where John Riggins lived? Everybody in Lawrence, Kansas knows where John Riggins lived. John Riggins, the big All-American at Kansas, okay, all-pro fullback. And he said, yes, I can. And I go out down a dirt road. I pull up in back of this farmhouse. I knocked on the door. Right away, I knew I had a chance to get John Riggins to come back and play because Mary Lou, his wife, answered the door. Her hair's up in rollers. The kids are running through the house, and she told me she wanted to come back. Now, there's only two ways to get a football player to do something. Find him or get his wife to come. So I said, Mary Lou, John wasn't at home. I said, you got to get me an appointment with John Riggins. Back to the motel. I got up the next morning, little red lights on. You got an appointment with John Riggins at 10 o'clock. So, man, I'm like you guys. I'm getting ready for a sales call. I'm just like you. Put my best stuff on. I got the game plan all as I'm driving out there. I pull up in back of that farmhouse, 10 o'clock in the morning, and the first time I lay my eyes on John Riggins, he's walking across the back of the courtyard with him and his buddy. He's in a camouflaged outfit. He'd been hunting that morning, and he had a beer can in both hands. I said, well, I can tell he's impressed with the coach. Okay? We go inside. We sat down for breakfast. He's on one end of the table. I'm on the other end. Mary Lou's serving us breakfast. I'm getting nothing from this guy. Okay, nothing. And so I figured, hey, what the heck? I better start my sales pitch. And so I said, John, hey, new coach, okay, new offense. I'm going to put you in the backfield. I'm going to give you the ball every down. I'm never going to ask you to block. Hey, I'm a salesman. You don't expect me to tell him the truth, do you? So, man, I'm going as hard as I can, man. I'm giving him everything I got. Nothing. All of a sudden, 10 minutes into this little breakfast, he leans across the table, and the first meaningful thing he said to me, he goes, you need to get me back there. I'll make you famous. And I went, oh, my gosh. He's an egomaniac. I said, I'm going to get stuck coaching a fruitcake for 10 years. I said, what can I do to get out of this? I'm like you guys, this is a bad deal. And so I'm thinking, and all of a sudden I went, I know what I'll do. I'll get him back. I'll trade him for a first-round draft choice. I'll get rid of the egomaniac. This is perfect. And so, man, I finished the sales pitch, went out, got in the car, flew back to Washington, D.C., nervous. Is he going to call? 2 days later, John calls me. And he said this. He said, Joe, I've made up my mind. I'm going to play next year. And I went, yes, this is perfect. I get the fruitcake back. I trade him for a first. This is awesome. And he said, there's only one thing I won't put in my contract. And I said, what's that? And he said, a no trade clause. Now, here's the deal. See, for you and I, picking people is hard. Okay? Analyzing people is one of the hardest things we'll do in life. I laugh every time people get upset about the local NFL team that makes a first-round draft choice and he's a bust. Okay? See, I looked at John Riggins and I said he's an egomaniac. Not the case at all. He came on that team, cared about the team. Great producer. Great team guy. See, I totally missed in my evaluation. And basically, what happened? Somebody up there was looking out after me. I didn't get rid of John Riggins. And you know what the moral of that story is? John Riggins made me famous. Every time it got down to 4th and 1, I'd go, give it to John. And people thought I was pretty smart. Here, I just want to share a couple things with you on picking people. Okay, because I think this is critical for you and I. You guys are coaches. You're putting your teams together. And you've probably already learned this. Hey, if you guys were up here speaking this morning, I know I could learn a lot from you because we're doing the same thing. Okay, we're coaches. And so here's a couple of things that we've learned I think are very practical. Number one, see, we had 13 people traveling the country trying to pick talent that coming out of college. Okay? And so, hey, we were like everybody else. We were basing them on their college career, what they did. And in general, the last 2 years of their college career. If they were very productive, hey, we're ready to draft them. And we started making a lot of mistakes. And here's what we started doing. We started telling our scouts, no, not just college. We want to go all the way back to junior high. We want to ask the teachers, the trainers, what kind of person was he? Was he productive? Okay? Then you go to high school and you do the same thing. Then you go to college and now what do you have? A 10-year history. What's the best way to analyze people is what? Over a long period of time. I always laugh about the marriage counselor. What's he tell the ladies? He says, hey, this guy's quit 3 schools and 4 jobs. He's going to quit you. It's the history. And so that's one thing that we started adding on picking people. The second thing that we did, can you imagine in football when I got to the Washington Redskins, our mental test for football was the ACT score. Okay? What's that? That's reading and writing. Okay, just between me and you, we didn't care if they could read or write. Okay? Now that's a joke. I'm saying a joke there. Okay? Because here's what we were interested in. Think about a football intelligence. Think about what kind of intelligence you got to have to play football. Okay, first of all right, you give them their assignment. And you give it to them visually. They see it. Okay, it's drawn up on the board. They see it. So some people learn by what? Seeing it. Then you describe their assignments. Some people we know, if you're good teachers, some people learn by hearing it. See it, hear it. But then what's a football player got to do? He's got to go out on the field, perform his assignment against moving objects. Is that the ACT score? I don't think so. Here's what we did. We went to a learning specialist at George Washington University, Harry Wax. And we said to Harry, I'm going to give you our 5 smartest football players. Art Monk, Joe Jacoby, I'm going to give you these 5 guys. They have what we want in mental intelligence. And I want you to develop a test that our scouts can take on the road that does a better job of analyzing football intelligence. Here's what was happening to us. We were taking people that had high ACT scores, and we found out we got them on our team, and they were football dumb. We were turning down a lot of players because they had poor ACT scores. We find out they're going to another team, and they were football brilliant. We were testing for the wrong things. Okay, so Harry developed that test. Can you believe this? It took 18 minutes. Our scouts take it on the road. Had nothing to do with reading and writing. It was giving assignments. It was moving blocks. And that would be a little 18-minute test that we started giving all of our players. If we had any question about a high draft choice, okay, we would fly them to Washington, D.C., we'd give them to Harry, he'd give them a 2-hour verbal test, and when he came out of that room, sometimes Harry would say this, hey, don't take this guy. He's a con man. Because somewhere in there on that test, he'd get stuck, and he'd start trying to con his way out of it. Other times he'd walk out there and go, hey, don't take this guy. And we go, why? And he goes, this guy will quit on you. Because somewhere in that test, he would get stuck, and he'd want to back right out of there and quit. Other times, Harry'd come out of that room, and he'd go, hey, this guy? He said, this guy will die for you. Because somewhere in there, he gets stuck on that test. Those sweat beads would pop out on his nose, and he would go after that as hard as he could. Single best thing we did. So what I'm saying to you in business is what? Many times businesses, what I found, we give the same test to everybody. Well, think about this. The accountant, what does the accountant do? Okay? And then the salesman. What's the salesman do? Hey, a salesman, forward, body lean, can take rejection. He's going to sell himself. The accountant is working what? With figures. We're giving everybody the same test. I just say to you is this. Make sure in picking people, okay, you want to make sure that you're testing them for what you want them to do, and spend your time making sure that you're doing a great job of analyzing the past history of that person. The third thing I share with you, and then we're going to do something a little different here. The third thing I share with you on picking people is this, is make sure that you get people that care about what they're doing. Okay? Now, I share this with you. 1984, we had a great football team, but we got off to a horrible start. We were 1-2, and we were playing a Monday night game in D.C. And I normally talk to the team the night before all the time because I'm too nervous the day of the game. They're too nervous. And so I had talked to the team on Saturday, but we had to wait all the way, on Sunday, we had to wait all the way till Monday night to play the game. And so I walked out in our locker room right before we went on the field. I've already talked to the team. But I decided that night, for just some reason, I just said this to our team before we got down and had our little prayer before we went out to play that game. I said this, hey, anybody here got anything to give the Washington Redskins, you need to give it tonight. We're in real trouble. We lose this game. We got down, we had that little prayer, and when we stood up, here's what I witnessed. I had 12 of those big guys go with me through 4 Super Bowls. And 3 of those great big guys that were standing right in front of me, they had tears coming out of their eyes. What did that tell me? Look, the people that you want on your team are people that care about what they're doing. Those guys didn't talk about money. They were focused on, hey, get me the ball, I'll win this game for you. They wanted to go to the Pro Bowl. Get people that care. The scouts, hey, our scouts always wanted to come back and tell me what? How high the guy could jump. Sergeant jump. Okay, because you can measure that. How fast he can run, because what? You can measure that. Okay? And here's that play. All right? I'm going to draw it up here. I'm treating you just like you're the quarterbacks. You're in the meeting room right now. And here's what I want to illustrate. Several key points I'm going to make by drawing this play up. And then I want to make a few key points that are critical in you and I talking about teams. Okay? All right. Charlie 10 Hitch averaged 9 yards per attempt every time we called it. See a few of the ladies going, why didn't you just call that ever down? You'd still be there. Good point. 9 yards per attempt. Okay, here we go. I'm going to coach you up. All right, you got 11 guys on offense. You got 11 on defense. Now, you always coach up on particularly a pass play. Okay, what can they do to take this away? All right, here's the pass play. Charlie 10 Hitch is a 5-yard burst by the 2 outside receivers, and they hook right there. All right, what the quarterback does, makes a good fake to that big fullback up the middle to try and hold everybody inside. Good fake, 3-step drop, and he keys the middle of the field. That's the difference between the hash marks, 18 feet, 6 inches. If one of these 4 secondary guys, normally on defense you have 7 up front, 4 in the secondary, if one of these guys stays between that hash mark, I know what? I got one receiver one-on-one. Okay? 3-step drop, key the middle of the field, up, safety in the middle of the field, boom, I explode that ball on the outside to Gary Clark. It's hard to get a great receiver down, average 9 yards per attempt. Okay, now you always coach up on what can they do to take that away. Okay, the first thing they can do with 4 people in the secondary is jump up here, you hit it a couple of times, and they press. Now I told you, football players got to be smart. They got to adjust to people moving on the field. Okay, the adjustment for the hitch is, if they press us, you turn that into an up. All right, now you go up. Quarterback makes a fake, up, safety still in the middle of the field, but I know they pressed them, so now I got 2 great receivers running ups. So I take that safety, I move him with my eyes one way or the other, and I take a shot at the other receiver, move the safety over, take a shot, got a chance for a big play. That play right there, in the 1987 Super Bowl, that was Ricky Sanders. This was Denver versus the Redskins. Doug Williams was the quarterback. He made that fake, and he saw they had pressed Ricky Sanders. 72 yards. That was our first play in the second quarter. We scored 35 points in that quarter, the most ever scored in a Super Bowl. We started it off with Charlie 10 Hitch. Okay, what's the other thing they could do to take that play away from us with 4 people? Okay, they could rotate the 2 safeties out of the center of the field, double both outside receivers. Okay, quarterback makes a fake. Middle of the field's open. Now I've got a completely different deal. All right, this H-back now becomes one of the most important players on the field. Every time this play is called, he makes a move on the linebacker. He gets on that hash mark, and he goes like mad. Okay, now I got a safety trying to play 2 guys going up. Again, I work that safety outside and take the inside guy. I work him inside, take the outside guy. This is the one in 1983. That's the play that Gary Clark caught on the inside against the 49ers that put us in the Super Bowl. All right? That's it. People, they say, hey, most of you are saying, and he got paid for that? That's so easy, I can't believe it. Now, I want to make a couple of points about this play, and we're going to close. Okay? All right, let's think about this for a minute. First of all, there's quite a bit there, isn't there? So, as you and I, we have to be good what? Teachers. Okay? And one of the keys, okay, to being a good teacher, and I think great leaders have a gift. Some of them have a gift, and the gift is this. Can you make everybody on your team feel important? Okay, think about this. I drew all this stuff up. These guys get credit for touchdowns. What happens if that center misses that off block right there? Okay? It don't matter what those guys are doing. If that center misses that block, we got a sack. We got nothing. And so the key for us, you and I, can you make everybody on your team feel important? As an illustration of that, when you walk into Joe Gibbs Racing, the person sitting there is going to be Paige. What would most people tell Paige? Hey, you're a receptionist. You know what I tell Paige? Paige. I walk in the mornings and I go, you're one of the most important people in this building. And she always looks at me and goes, Joe, what are you talking about? And I said, over half the people that walk in that front door, okay, are never going to talk to anybody on the second floor. None of us. And what they're going to do is talk to you. They're going to take a tour of Joe Gibbs Racing. We got videos. We got a glassed-in area. We got a sales department. They're going to take a tour of all that. And when they leave this building page, one half of the people that come in that front door, their impression of Joe Gibbs Racing is going to be how you treated them. I said, Paige, half the people that call in here on the phone, they're not going to talk to anybody on the second floor. Okay? They're going to ask you for instructions, directions, time that you're open, a map, a little description on how to get there. Okay? And so when they hang up, half the people that call into our building, their impression of Joe Gibbs Racing is going to be how you treat them. How many times have you called a business when you know that person on the other end of the line, they're just trying to get rid of you? They don't care. They're just trying to get the lunch. And so I think for us, okay, as leaders, we've got to do a good job of, first of all, communicating the game plan. That's why you guys are here. You got to be good teachers. We got to understand people learn by hearing, by seeing, by doing it. We got to be good teachers. They got to understand what we're trying to get across to them. That's why Mark was up here talking to you about Spirion and some of the technical things you guys are going to be going through in this room. And then the other part of that is, can you and I make everybody on our team feel important? Now, you guys have an unusual challenge. Sometimes you're dealing with thousands of people. Okay? I couldn't control 55 football players. But the point is this. The people that you touch, being the leader, okay, and then get them to touch the other people, can we make everybody on our team feel important? If we can do that, I think you're going to have a pretty good chance of having a good team. I've run out of time. I just want to tell you this, though, before I go, okay? You guys, you got to have the best year that you've ever had, or I'm not going to get invited back here next year. Thank you.